Hello, my name is Elder Price, and I would like to share with you the most amazing book. Hello, my name is Elder Grant. It's a book about America a long, long time ago. It has so many awesome parts, you simply won't believe how much this book can change your life. Hello, my name is Elder Green. I would like to share with you this book of Jesus Christ. Hello, my name is Elder Young. Hello, did you know that Jesus lived here in the USA? You can read all about it now. Hello, in this nifty book, it's free. No, you don't have to pay. Hello, hello, my name is Elder Smith, and can I leave this book with you for you?
Okay, well, hello, my name is Mud. It seems like most of the time the technical glitches that beset us, I'm sorry, but it turned out that we lost our audio right at the minute before we were to go on air, and I had to scramble, reboot the computer, and so we're a little late this morning, but not too bad, a few minutes. Would have to bear with us, though, in terms of trying to get everything gathered together. I didn't have time to get the websites all put together and things that I wanted to, so let me see. What have I got? I got that one. I got this one. Try to get together the documents that I need to run the show today. But anyway, we welcome you. Today is Wednesday, the what is it? The 10th day of October. Of October. 10th day of September. I'm trying to deal with this. I really do need some new computers. It's just ridiculous, actually. Now it's not responding. Anyway, today is 10th of September 2014. Welcome you to our show where we explain the hope that is within us, the reason why the Latter-day Saints are Christians, and the reason why you should be too. We try to explain what distinguishes LDS Christian doctrine from non-LDS Christian doctrine, and why the Latter-day Saints have declared since 1845 that the only hope of the only salvation remaining for the Gentiles in today's modern world is for them to repent, to be baptized, and to thus become identified in the same covenant and to worship at the same altar as Israel. That's why we have over 86,000 missionaries canvassing the world, essentially all of the Gentile world, but much of the heathen world as well, to invite people to Christ, and so that they can be baptized. And saying I can't open something here, but anyway, the point is that they have that message now that explains the voices from the dust that are warning us that this is the only salvation remaining for the Gentiles. We've discussed it in past episodes of Voices from the Dust radio and TV for more than a year now, and you can access all of those past episodes on our website, voicesfromthedust.org. That's voicesfromthedust.org. You just go there, click on the menu item TV, and you can watch the program live there, or click on one of the links provided for our YouTube channel, our Google Plus page, our Facebook page, which are all entitled Voices from the Dust. But again, our Facebook page, I don't know if that'll work or not. It seems when I went to a friend's house and tried it from there, it was asking him to like the page before it would show it to him, and I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, today we are here, the land of Zion, breaking the remnant out of captivity. But in Bozrah, what is this? We're going to be discussing Micah chapter 2, verse 12 through 13 today in terms of the land of Zion. But We don't have any guests, it looks like, that have logged on today yet, and we will have to introduce them if they come on late, I guess. But we could move on in the meantime to our whispers out of the ground. Now that is, let me pull it up here first. The whispers out of the ground refers to the Book of Mormon, because it contains the voices from the dust that are crying to us. A whisper, it's hissing forth since the day that it was translated. It was the Lord said that, and you can read it in the Bible, that He would send down righteousness from heaven, and He would send truth forth out of the earth to bear witness of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and His resurrection and the resurrection of all men. And that's what we have here in the Book of Mormon. We've been going through it chapter by chapter, and we're on chapter 18, I believe, and of Alma. So you can turn to it if you want, but I will share it here as we go through it. And just a little bit of background of where we're at. We're in the story of Ammon, who is who had been converted. He has gone forth with the sons of Mosiah, and they're out there testifying to the Lamanites. And they're a ferocious, hardened people, but they went among them, and Ammon went to one part, and he was taken before the king, and the king usually killed Nephites that fell into their hands, but he was impressed with Ammon, and he offered him one of his daughters as a wife, and he said, "No, I'd rather be your servant." And so then he turns out to be the servant. And yesterday we find where he protected the king's sheep and the rest of the king's servants in a miraculous way, and they brought the evidence of that to set it before the king, and he's just astonished. And so anyway, that's where we're at. So we'll go ahead and play that and talk about it on the other side.
And it came to pass that King Lamoni caused that his servants should stand forth and testify to all the things which they had seen concerning the matter. And when they had all testified to the things which they had seen, and he had learned of the faithfulness of Ammon in preserving his flocks, and also of his great power in contending against those who sought to slay him, he was astonished exceedingly, and said, "Surely this is more than a man. Behold, is not this the Great Spirit, who doth send such great punishments upon this people because of their murders?" And they answered the king, and said, "Whether he be the Great Spirit or a man, we know not. But this much we do know, that he cannot be slain by the enemies of the king, neither can they scatter the king's flocks when he is with us, because of his expertness and great strength. Therefore we know that he is a friend to the king. And now, O king, we do not believe that a man has such great power, for we know he cannot be slain." And now when the king heard these words, he said unto them, "Now I know that it is the Great Spirit, and he has come down at this time to preserve your lives, that I might not slay you as I did your brethren. Now this is the Great Spirit of whom our fathers have spoken." Now this was the tradition of Lamoni, which he had received from his father, that there was a Great Spirit. Notwithstanding they believed in a Great Spirit, they supposed that whatsoever they did was right. Nevertheless Lamoni began to fear exceedingly, with fear lest he had done wrong in slaying his servants. For he had slain many of them, because their brethren had scattered their flocks at the place of water, and thus because they had had their flocks scattered they were slain. Now it was the practice of these Lamanites to stand by the waters of Sebus to scatter the flocks of the people, that thereby they might drive away many that were scattered unto their own land, it being a practice of plunder among them. And it came to pass that King Lamoni inquired of his servants, saying, "Where is this man that has such great power?" And they said unto him, "Behold, he is feeding thy horses." Now the king had commanded his servants, previous to the time of the watering of their flocks, that they should prepare his horses and chariots, and conduct him forth to the land of Nephi. For there had been a great feast appointed at the land of Nephi by the father of Lamoni, who was king over all the land. Now when King Lamoni heard that Ammon was preparing his horses and his chariots, he was more astonished because of the faithfulness of Ammon, saying, Surely there has not been any servant among all my servants that has been so faithful as this man. For even he doth remember all my commandments to execute them. Now I surely know that this is the Great Spirit, and I would desire him that he come in unto me, but I durst not. And it came to pass that when Ammon had made ready the horses and the chariots for the king and his servants, he went in unto the king, and he saw that the countenance of the king was changed. Therefore he was about to return out of his presence. And one of the king's servants said unto him, Rabbana, which is being interpreted powerful or great king, considering their kings to be powerful. And thus he said unto him, Rabbana, the king desireth thee to stay. Therefore Ammon turned himself unto the king, and said unto him, What wilt thou that I should do for thee, O king? And the king answered him not for the space of an hour, according to their time, for he knew not what he should say unto him. It came to pass that Ammon said unto him again, What desirest thou of me? But the king answered him not. And it came to pass that Ammon, being filled with the Spirit of God, therefore he perceived the thoughts of the king. And he said unto him, Is it because thou hast heard that I defended thy servants and thy flocks, and slew 7 of their brethren with the sling and with the sword, and smote off the arms of others in order to defend thy flocks and thy servants? Behold, is it this that causeth thy marvelings? I say unto you, what is it that thy marvelings are so great? Behold, I am a man, and am thy servant. Therefore whatsoever thou desirest which is right, that will I do. Now when the king had heard these words, he marveled again, for he beheld that Ammon could discern his thoughts. But notwithstanding this, King Lamoni did open his mouth, and said unto him, Who art thou? Art thou that great spirit who knows all things? Ammon answered and said unto him, I am not. And the king said, How knowest thou the thoughts of my heart? Thou mayest speak boldly, and tell me concerning these things, and also tell me by what power ye slew and smote off the arms of my brethren that scattered my flocks. And now if thou wilt tell me concerning these things, whatsoever thou desirest I will give unto thee, and if it were needed I would guard thee with my armies. But I know that thou art more powerful than all they. Nevertheless, whatsoever thou desirest of me, I will grant it unto thee. Now Ammon, being wise, yet harmless, he said unto Lamoni, Wilt thou hearken unto my words, if I tell thee by what power I do these things? And this is the thing that I desire of thee. And the king answered him and said, Yea, I will believe all thy words. And thus he was caught with guile. And Ammon began to speak unto him with boldness, and said unto him, Believest thou that there is a God? And he answered and said unto him, I do not know what that meaneth. And then Ammon said, Believest thou that there is a great spirit? And he said, Yea. And Ammon said, This is God. And Ammon said unto him again, Believest thou that this great spirit, who is God, created all things which are in heaven and in the earth? And he said, Yea, I believe that he created all things which are in the earth, but I do not know the heavens. And Ammon said unto him, The heavens is a place where God dwells, and all his holy angels. And King Lamoni said, Is it above the earth? And Ammon said, Yea, and he looketh down upon all the children of men. And he knows all the thoughts and intents of the heart, for by his hand were they all created from the beginning. And King Lamoni said, I believe all these things which thou hast spoken. Art thou sent from God? Ammon said unto him, I am a man, and man in the beginning was created after the image of God, and I am called by his Holy Spirit to teach these things unto this people, that they may be brought to a knowledge of that which is just and true. And a portion of that Spirit dwelleth in me, which giveth me knowledge, and also power according to my faith and desires which are in God. Now when Ammon had said these words, he began at the creation of the world, and also the creation of Adam, and told him all the things concerning the fall of man, and rehearsed and laid before him the records and the holy scriptures of the people, which had been spoken by the prophets, even down to the time that their father Lehi left Jerusalem. And he also rehearsed unto them, for it was unto the king and to his servants, all the journeyings of their fathers in the wilderness, and all their sufferings with hunger and thirst, and their travail, and so forth. And he also rehearsed unto them concerning the rebellions of Laman and Lemuel, and the sons of Ishmael. Yea, all their rebellions did he relate unto them, and he expounded unto them all the records and scriptures from the time that Lehi left Jerusalem down to the present time. But this is not all, for he expounded unto them the plan of redemption, which was prepared from the foundation of the world. And he also made known unto them concerning the coming of Christ, and all the works of the Lord did he make known unto them. And it came to pass that after he had said all these things, and expounded them to the king, that the king believed all his words. And he began to cry unto the Lord, saying, O Lord, have mercy, according to thy abundant mercy which thou hast had upon the people of Nephi, have upon me and my people. And now when he had said this, he fell unto the earth as if he were dead. And it came to pass that his servants took him, and carried him in unto his wife, and laid him upon a bed. And he lay as if he were dead for the space of 2 days and 2 nights. And his wife and his sons and his daughters mourned over him, after the manner of the Lamanites, greatly lamenting his loss.
Wow. So the saga continues here. An amazing story that's again told with many first-person attributes, or say perspectives, and so we see, man, that's an amazing thing to be able to expound all those things and then to have this happen. So I don't have anybody here as a guest to suggest it, and to discuss it, and I don't know how we get the questions. I don't know how, when Andrew is here, he gets questions sometimes from the audience. So if there were any, I don't know how he does that. But at any rate, that is an amazing part. We'll continue that and see what happens to King Lamoni tomorrow, on tomorrow's program. In the meantime, we will go ahead with our feature where we do an update for our awful situation, we call it. Now, the reason we call it the awful situation is because that's what it's referred to in the Book of Mormon, and where the Lord I'm stuttering here because I'm trying to do more than one thing, which is difficult for me. But I'm trying to pull the website up because I had lost all of this when I had to reboot. I had it all prepared to go, but now I have to do it on the fly while I'm talking. So, and then of course the browser is very slow because we have the window open. But at any rate, the Lord was saying through Mormon in the Book of Mormon that these secret combinations that destroyed the ancients in this land would be among the Gentiles when they got to this land. And so he commanded us as Gentiles to awake to a sense of our awful situation, and for that reason we're trying to help people understand that. So we have a page on our website that is called Situation Update. So if you go to our website, voicesfromthedust.org, and there you can click on this item here, Situation Update, and it will take you to that page. And then we have this, for some reason, circles here indicating different videos is moved up into the title area. I don't know why. I didn't do anything to change it, but see, that's how it is with the technology. It's full of ghosts and goblins and gremlins that play tricks on you. But so here we are, anyway, with a bunch of what do you call it? Videos in this slide presentation. It looks like one of them here is not good. There's some kind of a problem there, but there are others, and we've just put a couple of new ones up there, so if you've watched them, you can find new ones. We try to keep that current every day. But so then you can also now another problem appears to be, maybe they're covered up. The links are gone to our background. Okay, well, we'll have to work on that. Seems like there's always something wrong with it. But we also have, when it's working right, links down here below this player, this slideshow of videos, to another similar one that have full-length videos on these various aspects of our awful situation, so that you can get the background on, come up to speed on what's actually happening in areas of economics and police state and military and our vaccination, our medical situation, our educational situation, all kinds of areas that the New World Order people, the global elite, are moving to bring us down. And so that's important to understand. But right now it looks like it's covered up. So sorry, I'll have to check. That's another thing they'll have to fix. All right, but now, in the meantime, we were yesterday talking about this 24th chromosome that they've come up with, that Tim Alvarino was talking about when he was on the Hagman and Hagman report the other day, and he was talking about the underground facilities that they have all over, and we talked about this dulce, the Spanish word for sweet, that they now say is a major one there in Mexico, and New Mexico, the state of New Mexico, and we played a video showing a lot of that. But in our awful situation update today, Tex Mars, who is an old-time and respected, if you will, that's been trying to wake the people up for a long, long time, was on an interview with Jeff Rentz. And they were talking about this 24th chromosome, this 24th chromosome that they've come up in order to put genes in that they want to modify people, actually. And remember, Tim Alvarino was talking about it in the context of this super soldier that the Toltec legend says that the white bearded prophet warned if they ever did that and used it in warfare, there'd be no forgiveness in this world nor in the world to come. And he says, for to do such a thing is to reach into space for the Godhead and to hurl mockery at the Almighty. Men should not presume to think in all things, because there are worlds beyond this world, the roads beyond the road they are treading, lamps beyond the lamp they are burning, worlds beyond the world they are living in. So that was an important thing. We've covered it in past shows. You can go find that about that legend and so on. But here it is. They're doing exactly what the Toltec said they would do. As incredible as it could have seemed so many years ago. So now I'm going to bring up this clip on the Jeff Rentz show. They don't actually have anything but pictures. I don't even know if it changed much. I don't think it changes any at all, but I will bring it up so we can at least have something to view while the audio is playing. So here we go.
You know, you're so right, Jeff, but I have found out something amazing. I have found that the very rich billionaire Jews are now very privately and quietly buying up all the DNA companies. For example, Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Google.
Yeah, Sergey Brin and his wife is into this whole DNA thing. They built a big lab, $20 million lab for them, or they got a grant. They're definitely in the DNA. Absolutely. Sergey Brin and Larry Page, one or both of their wives are geneticists, and they're heavily involved in this.
That's right. And I found out the number 2 company, 23andme.com.
That's it.
And the third ranked company in the United States is also owned by a Jew. Now why there's so few Jews? Why are they so interested in DNA? I understand they even have a secret agreement with the Mormons on how they're going to handle DNA. And I think it's because if you go to them and say, okay, I'm a Jew, I would like you to analyze my DNA, they'll come back and say, okay, you're a Jew. But I want to know if I go further. No, we don't do that.
Yeah, no, of course not. Now, I'll tell you why I think they're involved with it in just a couple minutes. Hang on a second. Tex is with us, and we'll be back with you great folks right after this. Okay, welcome back. Tex Morris is with us. Well, we got through one of the 9, Tex. We'll see how far we get here. Now, here's the big story. I'm not sure you saw this because it came and went very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
DARPA is going to genetically engineer all of us by creating and adding a 47th chromosome to the cells of our bodies.
Uh-huh.
Okay? This is a big, big, big deal because each chromosome, there are 46, carries the genes. Now, they're having trouble plugging in genes into the existing chromosomes because there's not enough room. I don't want to go into that. So they're going to literally install a new circuit. And that circuit will be able to carry all kinds of genetic markers, little genes. Here's the story. In that 1997 film, society is structured around eugenics as people are bioengineered to be perfect specimens, and one's entire life and position in the world is based on their genetics. Those conceived naturally without genetic screening are proclaimed invalid and only allowed menial jobs, despite the innate talents and skills they may possess. Alternately, the 2011 movie, In Time, portrays a dystopic future where humans are genetically programmed to stop aging at 25 and could live forever, so long as they earn enough time credits to afford to stay alive. All right, blah, blah, blah. Now, the project by DARPA has just put out, and this is clever, they're putting out a solicitation. They're advertising for a project called Advanced Tools for Mammalian Genome Engineering on the government's Federal Small Business Innovation Research site. So they're putting this out there. Now, that means one thing to me. Basically, they don't need our help. They've already done this. So they're going to go through the motions and run a parallel program, maybe pick up some bonuses. All right? Now, these human artificial chromosomes, the 47th chromosome that they're going to construct and add to the human being is called an HAC, a human artificial chromosome. They are going to hack us. They're hacking into our DNA. Two quotes. I'll send you this story. The ability to deliver exogenous, outside, DNA to mammalian cell lines is a fundamental tool in the development of advanced therapeutics, vaccines, and cellular diagnostics, as well as for basic biological and biomedical research. Unspecified. The successful development of technologies for rapid introduction of large DNA vectors into human cell lines will enable the ability to engineer much more complex functionalities into human cell lines than are currently possible. All right? The project's stated objective is to improve the utility of human artificial chromosomes, HACs. Here's the second quote. A human artificial chromosome, a HAC, is a microchromosome that can act as a new chromosome in a population of human cells. That is, instead of 46 chromosomes, the cell could have 47, with the 47th being very small, roughly 6 by 10 megabases in size, and able to carry new genes introduced by human researchers. They're underplaying it here. This is a massive innovation. They're going to be able to plug in genes into any of us and literally reconfigure us on the hoof. This is the most evil thing I have ever seen. And you mentioned Sergey Brin's wife. They're into genetics. They're all into. That's why they're buying up the genetic companies, because they're going to be able to introduce new chromosomes text and plug in as many unholy, satanic, inhuman genes as they want.
Wow.
That's what this is all about.
So they're finding, of course, that they're not really Israelites. They have no connection at all. But they want to go even beyond that into the super range.
Exactly.
Is that the way you see it?
Yeah. They're going to make super people out of some and dullards out of others. They'll do anything they want. Once you introduce the genes into a body, the body is directed by those genes, as we know.
Boy, that's just that's new brave new world, isn't it? All over again.
It's beyond that, I think.
It is, and this is what they're spending billions of our taxpayer dollars for.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they're not asking anyone. They're not. The Congress claim that they don't even know what's going on. Of course, I think they know a little bit more than they put on. But nevertheless, generally, I don't think that Congress is especially a smart set of people, and I think it's over their heads too. But it's an amazing thing. Well, okay. Thank you for. I saw that article. I did not think of the significance, but now I do.
God, it's huge. It's huge. I sent it to Michelle. If you want to email me or give my producer another direct email, I'll get it right directly to you. So
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, that's a big story.
Okay, the second myth.
Okay, there you have it. The 47th chromosome, amazing stuff. And of course, we heard Tim Alberino talking about the underground facilities where this takes place, and we saw the one guy, I can't remember his name, Niru or something, that was actually in that area and showing us all the different things that the government is doing in that area that we know about. But then, of course, the idea of the underground facility in what do you call it? Under Archuleta Mountain in Dulce. All right. Well, on the land, so I've got a message from our guests. They're trying to join us, have been trying to join us, but because of a bug in the program, Hangouts from Google Plus here, they don't get the invitation. It doesn't come through for some reason, and we've found that before whenever we have a crash. Well, in this case, it wasn't a crash. I had to reboot the computer in order to get the sound back. It had just gone away from me, and that proved to be a delay of a few minutes in the start of our program this morning. But the other complication is that they don't get the invitation to join. I've sent several times. I've sent resent the invitation, you might say, but evidently they're not getting it. I don't know what to do, but we'll just have to press on. On the Land of Zion program last week, we discussed the 1840 sermon where the prophet Joseph Smith expounds his 1833 prophecy, which foresees the scattering of the servants of the Lord when the enemy comes as a thief in the night to take upon him the fruit of the Lord's vineyard. We saw that Martha Jane Knowlton recorded that particular sermon, and it came out in kind of obscurely in the late 70s in BYU studies, and I just came across it because nobody talks about it for some reason. But in this prophecy, it's actually a parable that the prophet refers to in his sermon that she recorded 7 years later, right? It's found in the Doctrine and Covenants section 101. We've talked about it a lot. in verses 45 through 65 or 64 or so. And it comes in the form of a parable. And in the parable, after the servants of the Lord are scattered, the Lord tells one of his servants to go gather the strength of his house to assemble them for a military march in order to go and redeem his vineyard. Well, curiously, the prophet Micah in the Old Testament, in a rather controversial passage that is, not, it's really ignored more than debated, but among the esoteric people in the high towers of academia, they discuss it, or they used to in the old days, and a lot of them disputed that it was saying that it was not, it was corrupted, that it hadn't come forth and down to us in its pure form, because they couldn't make sense out of it. And we're going to be looking at that. But it's amazing, because here in Micah, he prophesies that the Lord would assemble Jacob in the latter days, all of them, he says, but this is not the assembling of them in the land of Zion that we talk about so much. But he says he assembles them as a sheep in sort of a protective sheepfold in Edom. And I actually had a graphic ready to go before they all disappeared when I had to reboot the computer unexpectedly. So anyway, I can maybe see if I can bring that picture up. I don't know how lucky I'll be, how fortunate I'll be, or successful I'll be. But I would like to try to bring that up, because it has the quote of Micah, the scripture that we're talking about. And excuse me here a minute, let me just try this. And he okay, there it is. I don't know if I can't read it all that well, but it's good enough. See, here's the land of Israel, and of course, Mediterranean Sea, and then in the red there, you can see this is the land of Edom. And they, of course, make it red because the word Edom means red, and Esau. We've talked about that before. This is the ancient size, and this is the smaller size of current Edomia, and I don't know exactly what that would be. That's on the Israeli side of things, but it's down by Bethlehem, it looks like, and so on. But it's not that's not important. What is important is that it's over there in the Holy Land. But just as we're talking about America being the land of Zion and having a new Jerusalem instead of the old Jerusalem in the old land of Israel, and the scriptures that we read, like in Ezekiel and Isaiah, may be referring to the new land as well as the old land. There's this big question about whether or not the Bible refers to America, and they can't see any explicit reference to that land, but of course it was unknown to those people. But when we then read in between the lines, we can see that it definitely refers to America in there. And so here in this case, it actually refers to the capital of Edom, which is Bozrah. As you can see, it says, I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. Turn this off so I can see it better. Oh, no, I hit the wrong one. Oh my gosh. What's happened there now? Excuse me, I just forgot how to operate things so I can see this. It's a little aggravating. I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel, he says here. I will put them together as the sheep of Bozrah, as the flock in the midst of their fold. They shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men. And then in verse 13, the breaker is come up before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate and are gone out of it, and their king shall pass before them, and the Lord on the head of them. So notice that the King James translators do not capitalize this word breaker, because they see here two people spoken of, the breaker and then the king, the Lord, who goes at the head. It's just as Moses was the leader to pull Israel out of Egypt, and the Lord going before them. Of course, in that case, in a cloud by day and a fire by night. But so we have the same image here, and it's really hard for the scholars to understand, because Micah is talking about the curse that is falling upon Israel, but here this looks like a deliverance. So the two, and there's an abrupt change between the verse 11 and verse 12. That says 2 there, but it should actually be 12. So they don't understand how he can go from one to the other so fast. But when we look at it today, we see that it's probably referring to what's happening in our modern times, not in ancient times. So we see now, of course, in current events, if you go to our awful situation update, you will see that the Islamic Caliphate has reestablished itself. You can see that in the main media as well, but you don't get all the truth about it, that the West is actually establishing it. And because Idumea and the residue of the heathen are established in the White House there, then they are actually underwriting this. They're using the captured operation of the United States government to accomplish that, because it's the will of the real residue of the heathen, the global elite, to use the Islamic Caliphate for their own purposes in establishing the New World Order, in bringing down the West, really. So here we see in the last little while this year that the Islamic Caliphate declares itself reestablished and is to be used as a tool in the hand of the global elite. And they're already taking the lives of many Christians. We've seen the beheadings and all the different gruesome things that are going on and all over there in the Middle East. And they are also threatening the hegemony and even the lives of Western Gentiles in the United Kingdom and also in America. So, you know, our understanding then that we talk about on this show of the role of Edom, and we see it here in Micah's prophecy, is it's becoming clearer and clearer. The assembly of Jacob, you see, in the lesser sheepfold of Bozrah, portends their temporary captivity in Edom for their protection. In his commentary on the Old Testament, Frederick Carl Iceland explains, for instance, and I'm going to quote here, verses 12 and 13 transpose us abruptly from the present corruption, present during the time of Micah, facing imminent doom, to the distant future, which would be our time, when a remnant of the people carried into exile will be restored. On the surface, the transition from verse 11 to verse 12 appears abrupt, but there is a real logical connection between the two verses. The people are ready to turn to a prophet who will promise pleasant things. This Micah cannot do himself, but nevertheless his message is not one of unmitigated doom. He too has salvation to proclaim. And though not for the immediate future or for everybody, judgment, distress is all he sees ahead of him, and all will be banished from the land. But in exile, the corrupt will be annihilated. The loyal remnant, purified through suffering, will be assembled again by Jehovah. He himself will redeem it and restore it to its old home. Now Jacob here, or Israel here, seems to be identical in meaning. He said, obviously it is, denoting the whole nation. Similarly, he goes on, the word all and the word remnant appear to be synonymous. The thought is here that one found in the other prophetic utterances, he's saying this is the same thought that is found in other prophetic utterances, that at the time of the restoration, which is our time, of course, the present distinction between north and south will be obliterated. That the call will be extended to the whole nation Israel, to the whole of Jacob, you see, but that only a remnant will respond. And then he refers to Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 11 through 14. This remnant, he says, will be numerous. However, they will be shut up, you see, in the sheepfold. They'll be noisy like a flock of sheep in a sheepfold. As the sheep of Bozrah, if the text is correct, the sheep of Bozrah, quote unquote, must be regarded as a popular saying like the kine of Bashan in Amos chapter 4, verse 1, alluding to Bozrah's wealth in sheep, as in Amos chapter 1, verse 12. So he goes on and says some other things, but then he continues, there is a modern Arabic word meaning sheep stall, like horse stall or cow stall, I guess, cattle stall. Anyway, a stall for sheep. And that word is applied to the place in which the sheep are kept during the night to protect them against wild beasts. We have a picture of that we're going to see, I think, in this short video I'm going to play. The corresponding Hebrew word may be intended here. The sentence may be read as follows, quote, I will put them together as sheep in the sheepfold, that they may be safe from all enemies. Well, when we talked about this before, we showed pictures, and I think it'll come up here in this little video that I want to play in a minute. But those pictures show the sheepfold, a typical sheepfold, and it's constructed of stone, and they put the sheep in, and then they put the stones back in place to keep them in, and in the entrance. And then when they break them out, the reason it's called break out is because they have to take those stones. They have to break away the stones in the sheepfold to lead the sheep out of it. So anyway, the whole idea here is that when he refers to this great noise while they're in the sheepfold, it implies that their numbers will be great. Hence, the noise made by them will be loud. The gathering will take place before the actual deliverance, he goes on to say. And united, the remnant will be strong enough to overcome all obstacles and return to its old home. See? So return to its old home has been interpreted as, of course, Jerusalem, because the picture we have here, if you look at this picture right here, you see, I don't know exactly where Bozrah is. He hasn't indicated it on the map, but anciently I think it was in this area right here. But if it's in this area, then it's not very far to Jerusalem, which would be up in here. It's uphill that way, but so they would have, a march, a strenuous march to return to Jerusalem. But of course, we see between the lines, reading between the lines, that that's not the old Jerusalem, but the new Jerusalem. And the Edom is not this Edom here, but the Edom that we see coming in modern times, where Islam is trying to take over, literally take over the United States with the help of the residue of the heathen, which is the Illuminati, the global elite that are really pulling the strings there. All right, so, but then the breaker comes. Now, the author goes on here, still quoting, the breaker is the one who breaks down the obstacles and opens the way. If the picture of the flock is continued, the expression is best understood as denoting the shepherd who opens the gate to let the sheep pass through. Evidently, he didn't know about how they actually break down the rocks to do that. There wasn't any gate in those ancient days. They just walled up the entrance with rocks, and then they broke it down to when they wanted them out. So this picture of a breaker is really important, but it looks like he didn't understand that. He's just saying opening the gate. If, as is not impossible, he says the figure changes to that of an army, it denotes the captain who is to lead the host in triumph from exile. In either case, the term is of messianic import. Now, that is amazing. And this was written, this is quite an old book. I don't know, I didn't get the date of it exactly, but it's free on the internet as an ebook. And it's amazing here to see him saying this. Let me read it again. If the picture of the flock is continued, the expression is best understood, the expression of one who breaks out the sheep, is best understood as denoting the shepherd who opens the gate to let the sheep pass through. If, as is not impossible, the figure changes to that of an army, it denotes the captain who is to lead the host in triumph from exile. In either case, the term is of messianic import. Whoa, man, I really want to ask Rabbi Tovia, if I ever get the chance, what they say about this, because it parallels the words, not the words, but the concept, the idea in the oral tradition, in the oral Torah and the Talmud of the Jewish, not the Jewish Messiah, the Israel Messiah, the Messiah ben Joseph. See, so we've talked about that, where they have this idea that there is a figure who takes charge of an army, gathers Israel, and then as a captain leads them triumphantly from exile to Jerusalem, where he establishes temple, reestablishes temple worship and a civil government. So that's, of course, really indicative or parallel to this interpretation of section 101. And we see that Messiah ben Joseph, which of course Messiah means anointed one. So here Joseph Smith being anointed and called up, we've talked about it in more detail, but I'm just going to allude to it, where the Lord calls him as one of his servants. He says that specifically in a revelation, that that's him, and that he sends him to gather the strength of his house. We'll see that here, and let me not dwell on it now. We're going to get to it in a minute. But continuing here with Eiselman, or whatever his name was, he says, through the gate, the land of exile is likened in the one case to a sheepfold, in the other case to a prison house. Through the gates, the remnant will march in triumph on its way home. So that's the idea also, that they have to be broken out because they're imprisoned. But if they're imprisoned, if they're in captivity, it's in captivity in Bozrah, which is the capital of Edom. That means they're in captivity relative to the Muslims. And we see that coming. We've got all the FEMA camps prepared, and the actual talked about yesterday how it might be that the homeless are even right now being taken to these camps. But we can see that if the economy collapses because of, well, it's already collapsed actually. There is no economy to speak of. We've been lied to about a recovery. This is a terrible depression. It's called a recession, not a depression, because of the propaganda coming out of the mainstream media that is owned by the global elite, and that's clear. And so they spin it and to hide the fact that the economy is collapsing all around us, and now the dollar is on the verge of destruction, and so is the Constitution, as Joseph Smith prophesied and talked about it in his sermon, referring to the 101 parable, that the Constitution, which we say and pointed out, is the hedging up the vineyard to protect it, the work of the 12, who are the 12 trees, in other words, the church there. In the work, you could look at it in a general way, like it's the work of Christianity, or you can look at it more specifically because the 12 trees indicate the 12 apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the enemy is the one who wants to take upon them the fruit of that vineyard. So anyway, we've gone through all that. I'm getting too far off. But you see here, the man is saying, yeah, that's not just a sheepfold. The image here is captivity. They're coming out of captivity, and the Lord is going before them, see? All right, well, he continues, broken up, broken forth, he puts in quotes here, passed through, gone out. The three verbs describe in a pictorial manner progress which cannot be stopped by any human power. Again then, see, divine deliverance of this group that are captive in Edom, and that being interpreted in our day to be captive by Muslims in this land, but then the Lord breaks them out. Now, how long they would be captive by Muslims before they're broken out, march to back to Zion, redeem the vineyard of the Lord, and build the new city, New Jerusalem, we don't know. We have no indication of that. But very, very interesting. All right, and finally he talks about their king, and he says their king before the returning host will go out, will be broken out, and redeem Jerusalem, redeem the vineyard in our case, in our interpretation. Their king Jehovah, as at the time of the Exodus, will go before them. Jehovah is not identical with the breaker, emphasizes there. So that's why it's obviously the King James translators agreed with that, because they did not capitalize the word breaker. All right, well, let's now go to this video. I was going to try to trim it up for you. It's actually a past episode of ours where we're talking about Messiah ben Joseph. So we want to see that now. Not much really to see, but some interesting pictures. And I will try to advance it to the proper place here, somewhere in there. And then share that with you. Get it over here where it's a little bigger. It's not high resolution, so it doesn't come up real big, but somewhere around there, I think, would be fine. And there it is. And then I will go over here and start the actual.
Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, now bear with me for a minute while I try to sync up the audio. Okay, there it is, more or less.
With George Norrie. He was to appear, I think, not Sunday, Monday, or I don't remember the exact date. I had to listen to it belatedly as when it appeared on YouTube. But it was not too long ago. It was recently when he appeared to discuss his new book and the documentary that accompanies it called "The Rabbi Who Found Messiah." And that's being promoted pretty heavily now by World Net Daily, that had encouraged Gallups to write the book when they found out about the rabbi and his revelation. And so I was really anticipating the discussion of the two messiahs on that program with its huge audience, thinking that it would finally let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, and force the discussion of Messiah ben Joseph as well as Messiah ben David and how the two go together and get it out in the open. But alas, as I belatedly listened to the program on YouTube last night, I did not even hear the topic mentioned. And to say the least, I was very disappointed because it's so exciting to hear the Southern Baptist preacher. I think he's a Baptist preacher. It may not be Southern Baptist, I'm not sure, but he is a well-known radio preacher down south. And he talks here about the two messiahs in a way I've never heard any discussion, public discussion before. And so it's pretty exciting. Even though, of course, he makes no connection to Joseph Smith, he really makes it clear, though, how big a deal it is to the Jews. And that's something that I think we need to understand. Well, I was hoping he would have time to explain how another well-known radio preacher in the South called Pastor Dan was just delighted that his rather well-documented book came out because of the controversy over the rabbi's revelation, which had developed on Pastor Dan's show between a Jewish rabbi friend of his and Chris Putnam, a popular Christian scholar who has been on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie lately several times, and to discuss his book that, along with his partner, I can't think of his name right off, it's just skipped me, but they've written about the popes, and they became really famous overnight when they predicted the retirement of Pope Benedict, and so that was amazing because nothing like that had ever happened in 600 years, over 600 years, and yet they were able to predict that it was going to happen. So Chris Putnam, along with name's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, those two have been on Coast to Coast to discuss their book. And so this would have been great because there's a huge audience with Coast to Coast AM, and they were familiar with of course, Chris Putnam. And so this would have been a great segue into the discussion of the two messiahs, but it didn't happen. But the good news is that I've managed to get some clips from Pastor Dan's show that I could play for us now, and so we can get a flavor of the drama that was going on. I was hoping that would be put on Coast to Coast, but wasn't. But at least we can, in our little audience here of a few dozen maybe, we can get an idea of this. So the first clip kind of introduces the discussion. Pastor Dan says that he came across this hidden knowledge. It's not, he hadn't known anything about it before. Of course, many of them don't. So, we could say it's sort of the hidden knowledge that he asked people. He thinks it's so important that he asked people to get a copy of Gallup's book and not only read it, but take it before the Lord and pray about it. Of course, we're thinking of the Book of Mormon all the time, how they should get that and read it and pray about it. But now we're going to go to this first clip to get things started here.
Well, I really feel after reading I got kind of taken into this whole thing by accident, like I said, with having a guest on and the other one, and then finding out that you wrote the book, which is the blessing, so to speak, at the end of that. But I really believe, folks, that this book, it will open up, if you open your heart and you pray about it before you go into it, like you do with your Bible. I believe there's some things that are going to be revealed to you, and you're going to get a greater understanding of, number one, of why the Jews even thought the way that they did in the way that they do, because of this thing called, that you point out so greatly, and I hadn't heard anybody else talk about it. It was told to me by a rabbi I had on a couple of years ago, and talk about hatred. When I first asked him to come on, Carl, he sent me to a website that told me what they thought about the Christians, and it was just really horrible. And I said, well, let's move on beyond that. I still want you on. And we talked, and he told me about the two messiahs. And that's a really amazing fact that most Christians know nothing about.
See, the amazing fact that most Christians, in fact, I'd say 99% of them, know nothing about. And so it's really important. I'm so pleased with this. I was just, again, disappointed that it didn't get out on Coast to Coast. Okay, but this is, even this much is great because it shows how different the understanding of the coming of the Messiah is for the Jews and the Christians. See, the Jews expect this restoration to the lands of their inheritance. The prophets all talk about it. If you read Ezekiel 36, Jeremiah, just all of them, especially Isaiah in the Old Testament. See, that's the idea that the Lord is going to remember His people. He's going to take the suffering from their hands and put it into the hands of their enemies, those who said, lay your body down, and they had to lay their body down while they walked over. Oh, man, it's moving. The pathos is just thick, and especially in Isaiah, that approaches poetry. But even in Ezekiel, where he talks about how the land, he actually talks to the land and tells it how it will be no longer consuming its inhabitants, referring to the judgments of God. But when the righteous, when its rightful owners are returned to it, then it shall bring forth its bounty, and it goes into such detail. It's really amazing. So the fact that the idea of the Messiah ben Joseph leads this off is so strong among the Jews, that this restoration to their lands of inheritance comes before the coming of Messiah ben David, and that many of them see the fulfillment of these things in the sad case of the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, is something we're going to see here eventually, but then we'll compare that to Joseph Smith as we see Joseph Smith fulfilling that prophecy and being actually the Messiah ben Joseph. But let's go to clip 2 now.
I want to hear more about this. Bring us into these two messiahs. What am I talking about? Two messiahs. Yes. I thought there was one.
Yes, well, this will certainly help. Let me explain this, and this will bring the New Testament alive to your listeners. The Jews for the longest, and I don't know really where this originated. It goes back thousands of years, and there are various denominations of belief as to how all of this fits together. But generally speaking, among the Orthodox Jews, they believe that there will be two messiahs that will come to Israel. They call the first one Messiah ben Joseph, and as you know, the word ben is Hebrew, means son of. Messiah, son of Joseph. And then they believe that the ultimate Messiah, who will rule and reign and restore Israel as the rightful leader of nations among nations, is Messiah ben David, Messiah, son of David. Now, this is so fascinating because what they say, now the Bible doesn't say these things specifically, but the Jewish teaching, the Jewish commentary upon the Bible, the Jewish tradition, the Jewish oral teachings, the rabbinical Jewish teachings teach that Messiah ben Joseph, when he comes, he will be more of a government political, military type figure who will lead the nation to become a strong nation, to prepare the way for Messiah ben David, the ultimate ruler. But Messiah ben Joseph will be, quote, rejected by his brothers. He will be eventually killed, but he will be eventually resurrected when Messiah ben David comes. Messiah ben David will effect his resurrection from the dead. Well, that's astounding. And then they teach that when Messiah ben David comes, that he will rule and reign and bring Israel into the forefront among the nations, and the messianic reign of God will be upon the face of the earth in Messiah ben David. Now, for our Orthodox Jewish listeners, please hear me. I'm not trying to do a travesty to that teaching. I know it's much more complex than that, and there are various flavors of that teaching among the Jews, so I understand that. I'm just trying to simplify it for the sake of our discussion tonight. But those are the two Messiahs. Now, Pastor Dan, of course, as I'm saying this, you're chomping at the bits because you understand that Jesus, Yeshua, Yehoshua, he fulfilled both Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David expectations of the Jews. As a matter of fact, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the back of the donkey, and in the week of Passover, right before his crucifixion, the people were hailing him as Hosanna to the Son of David. And that's why the Pharisees went to him and said, tell your disciples to stop this. This is blasphemy, because the people were hailing Jesus as Messiah ben David, the ultimate Messiah. See, modern Christians, especially those that live in America 2,000 years later, we read that passage and we don't understand the power of it. When they were calling him Jesus, the Son of David, we think, oh, well, they didn't really know he was Messiah. Look, they're calling him Son of David. No, that's the Jewish term for the ultimate Messiah, the one who would come and rule and reign. And think of this, Pastor Dan. This understanding of the two Messiahs also explains why Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus. Because Judas thought that Jesus, who was also son of Joseph, right? Mary, his mother, Joseph, his earthly father, this Messiah ben Joseph, he thought that Jesus was going to come and rule and reign as this militaristic, governmental, political figure who could raise the dead, who could heal the sick, who could create food out of a couple loaves of bread and some fish. I mean, what a military he could have if he could heal the soldiers that got wounded, if he could feed the soldiers with a few loaves of bread and fish. I mean, here is Messiah ben Joseph. And that also explains why James and John, their mother, went to Jesus and said, look, when you come into your kingdom, I want my boys, one to sit on your left and one to sit on your right. She wasn't talking about a millennial reign or a heavenly kingdom. She thought he was Messiah ben Joseph. And so did some of the disciples early on. They were ready to get on with it. They were ready to get on with the political ruling and reigning to make way for Messiah ben David. So that's pretty fascinating stuff, isn't it, Brother Dan?
Well, I would disagree with Gallup in this a great deal, because there were many who realized that that Jesus was claiming to be Messiah ben David, that he was the son of David. Remember the publican up in the tree? There's lots of instances there. I think it's a stretch to think that any of them thought that he was Messiah ben Joseph, because even though Mary's husband was named Joseph, he was not a descendant of Joseph of old. That Messiah, they understood, at least the rabbis understand today even, that that Messiah spoken of is a descendant of Joseph of old. He's from the northern kingdom, which had long since been destroyed and people taken captive at the time of Jesus. So, but again, it was confusing for people who were trying to understand this. Carl Gallup might have mentioned out of the New Testament, speaking of making it come to alive, the fact that when the disciples were coming down from the mountain with Jesus after they had seen, well, they didn't see, but they heard so much. They saw a lot too, but they didn't see everything. But anyway, they then understood very clearly that Jesus was Messiah ben David, because the Father had declared him, say, this is my son, hear him up on the mountain. So when they're coming down, they said, well, here you are, obviously the Messiah, all right, but the scribes have always taught that Elias would come first and restore all things. And then, of course, Jesus said, well, that's right, they are correct, but I say unto you that Elias has come already, and they did whatsoever they wanted to him. And then that's when they understood that he talked to them, that he was referring to John the Baptist. And John the Baptist did come, remember, as the preparation before the first coming of the Messiah. But what the scribes were teaching, and what the disciples wanted to understand more clearly, was the fact that there would be a forerunner in the spirit of Elias that would come before the Messiah ben David. Well, anyway, we're going to run out of time. I've got one more clip to play here, and that's to show how the Jews that believe in this so much have decided, many of them, that Ariel Sharon might fulfill this role. Let's play that next clip.
Then Ariel Sharon figures into the two Messiah thing, and that's pretty fascinating in itself too.
Yes, it is, because you see, when we hear Rabbi Kaduri saying, well, he has to die first before Messiah ben David comes, well, immediately the Western mind thinks, well, he's just upset with Sharon and thinks he has to die. But from the Jewish mindset, it's highly possible, and I can't prove this because I don't know what Kaduri was thinking, but since I know he was a rabbinical Jew and a venerated rabbi, more than likely he was thinking that perhaps Ariel Sharon was Messiah ben Joseph. Now, a lot of people in Israel think that. In fact, you can get on the internet and find Orthodox Jews who say that they believe that Ariel Sharon was Messiah ben Joseph. Okay, why? Well, Ariel Sharon was in Israel's military as a young officer before Israel was even a nation. In other words, there was a kind of an underground revolutionary military that was being put together before the May 1948 Independence Day, and Ariel Sharon was a part of it. So he was a part of the birthing of Israel, and when you look at his history, and my book points this out, he was rejected by his brothers. But yet, I mean, they teased him. He was fat. He was a little arrogant. He was overbearing. They teased him unmercifully. His own, it's kind of the Joseph story in the coat of many colors. He was rejected by his own people, by his brothers. Yet he rose to be this military hero in Israel. Eventually rose into all manner of governmental offices until he finally was prime minister. He is the one who led Israel in the Yom Kippur War, the Six-Day War, the recapturing of Jerusalem, the recapturing of Sinai. He was in the War of Independence. He was eventually tagged with the name Ariel Sharon, Lion of Israel, King of Israel. Some even called him the Savior of Israel. So you see all of these messianic terms. And by the way, all of this is documented and resourced in my book. I mean, this comes right out of the Israeli newspapers. I mean, this is not stuff I'm making up. And so you've got all of these. And then what happens to him? Well, he's rejected by his brothers, yet he rises to become this political military hero, the Savior of Israel. And then he, quote, dies, but not really. He's just hanging in there in a coma for how many years? Not 6, not 8, but 7, a biblical number of perfection, 7 years He's in a coma. If he wakes up, people will claim that he has resurrected, and here's Messiah ben Joseph. And when he dies, though, then Messiah ben David can come. So do you see how the Jewish mindset thinks about these things?
See, and that's so important. We don't have that much time left, about 3 minutes. But I wanted to point out so much, and you need to go back if you're interested in these things and read or listen to our past episodes. But we show how, Joseph Smith, the prophet of the restoration, is the Lord's servant, and his people, of course, are identified with Ephraim, and Joseph, the father of Ephraim, who is to be the head of the dispensation of things. See, that plays into this as well. So what we see is the Lord speaking in the Book of Mormon, saying that all this would be declared to the Gentiles. The fullness of the gospel would be declared to the Gentiles, which of course fullness includes the restoration of the house of Israel to their lands, and the favor of the Lord, the blessings of the Lord that are so tremendously described by the ancient prophets, and which are quoted, especially Isaiah, quoted by the Savior himself, that is so moving. But it says that there will be many that will not believe, though a man declare it unto them, and yet it talks about his servant being marred because of that unbelief. Yet he says, this life of my servant will be in my hands, and I will heal him and show unto the children of men that my wisdom is greater than the cunning of the devil. And so we see that refers to section 101, as we've discussed, and the hedge being broken down, and the 12 trees being broken down, and the servants of the Lord fleeing, and then the Lord coming and say, what's the cause of this? And of course that's because the tower wasn't built. But then he says he sends one of his servants, which later is identified as Joseph Smith, to go and gather the strength of his house, his warriors, and come and redeem his vineyard, for it is his. He's paid for it with money, which of course refers to New Jerusalem. And then the city will be built, the holy city, and the power of God be among its inhabitants, and Jesus himself be in their midst as they prepare for his second coming. It is so fantastic, and we haven't even talked about Micah and the idea of breaking out of the sheepfold of Bozrah, and who Bozrah is, and so on. But we did that in our previous episodes, and next time I'll get a link to that. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful day today, and as always, I pray that the Lord's choice.
Okay, so that was, I don't know what the date of that was, but you can find it. Messiah ben Joseph is the title of that clip, and the clips previous to that and succeeding that are talking about this subject in detail. But one of the important things that we want to do and stress for today, and the program is just about, time is up for this program, but what we want to do is express this idea of the captivity. See, that gathering together may picture this idea because they're coming through the gate. The author here that we've been quoting in his commentary on the Old Testament, the land of exile, he says, is likened in the one case to a sheepfold, but in the other to a prison house. Through the gates, the remnant will march in triumph on its way home. So how long, though, that implies, it doesn't imply it, but how long that might be is difficult to understand. I don't know why. Now I'm having another difficulty. That should disappear. Hold on just a minute. I got another problem. Where? Okay, there. All right. I see. I'm not understanding what was going on here. I was thinking that was shared. That was not shared. That was a picture that I had brought up. Okay. Just another reason why we need a producer here. But at any rate, what I'm trying to say is this idea of them being captivity. We don't know how long they're making a great noise in the sheepfold, and they're making, they are broken out through the gate, passed through, gone out. These three verbs, he says, describe in a pictorial manner progress which cannot be stopped by any human power, indicating thereby that this is a military march, and that, of course, fits with the idea of the mission of Messiah ben Joseph. So everything kind of comes together. There was one other aspect that I wanted to show, but I don't have the picture. And you saw you saw it in that video clip. It's the constellation where it shows the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. Well, it turns out that the Little Dipper is known as the lesser sheepfold, and its tail points down there in the diagram that you saw there. I should have brought it up, and I probably would have if I hadn't had this difficulty with the audio and had to reboot everything. But anyway, those of you that have seen it before recognize the fact that the tail of the Little Dipper, which is known as the lesser sheepfold, which is Bozrah, is actually pointing down. Here, I actually have a picture of it. To this line of precession. Oh, that's not very. There it goes. Okay, it's clear. Let me share that with you. So that you can see. Here's an article where I got it from on Micah 2:12-13. The only one I've ever seen before. And here's a video explaining it and so on. Lots of different things. But it's talking about this exile and the breaking out of Bozrah. There's where I got that picture of the sheepfold that you saw in the video. And here is this picture now of, he's titled it God's Redemption Story as Seen in the Stars. And he chides modern day pastors for never explaining this. But if you look in the constellations, here is the Big Dipper, you see, and then over here is the Little Dipper. Okay, and then this is the constellation Draco, which is the dragon and his tail trying to wrap itself around the Little Dipper there and the people. But see, what he has this timeline drawn here with this arc, and it comes across the tail there at the time of Abraham and continues on down to this yellow portion of the arc. Here's Polaris, the northern star, and the final star in the tail of the Big Dipper. And so you see it crosses this what this arc represents is the precession, the 26,000 year precession that the ancient Americans were able to track so well. And this is just some part of it here. See, starting at 4000 BC at the creation, and then going on down to the time of Christ, right here in the meridian of time. And this is where the north, or the center axis of the axis, the rotational axis of the Earth, is pointing along this arc. See, as time goes by, heading for this time of ourselves, where we're at 2,000 years after Christ, who's in the meridian of time here. And so then, sometime in here is when the meridian starts. Well, it didn't start in 2000. and it didn't start in 2012, so we don't know how long it's going to take before it goes. But this yellow ark is 1,000 years old. So if it, but it really should start at the time when Christ returns and then goes 1,000 more years. But you see here how it's headed towards this, and there's this intersection with the tail. Well, that little dipper is the lesser sheepfold. As he explains, he says, the sheep of God's pasture have been penned up in the lesser sheepfold and threatened by the encircling dragon, the breaker. Now, he capitalizes it here because he sees this in terms of Jesus, and so he doesn't know why they didn't capitalize it, why the scholars, the King James scholars, didn't capitalize it, because he thinks it's one person, right? The breaker comes, that's the return of Christ in his mind, and they break out in a glorious deliverance with their Messiah at their head. So, and then he quotes Micah 2, chapter 2, verses 12 through 14. So, there's this little mix-up here. See, they're identifying it with the second coming. But what we're trying to explain is, no, the Jews understood this differently. They understood the Messiah ben Joseph was a separate person who would be a military, political leader and would march and break Israel out of the sheepfold in Bozrah to go to Jerusalem, but in our case it would be New Jerusalem, to redeem the vineyard of the Lord, to redeem Jerusalem in their terms, and establish their temple worship, rebuild the temple, of course, and then the temple worship associated with it, and also a civil government. See? So that doesn't fit well with what's happening in the land of Israel today, and it doesn't fit well with what the creedal Christians see as the second coming of the Lord, where they combine the two, the Messiah ben Joseph and the Messiah ben David, into one. But it certainly fits into the Latter-day Saint theology, doctrine, and the prophecies of Joseph Smith in section 101, the parable of section 101. So anyway, I don't know what kind of captivity, or how long we'll be in that captivity if this is true, and it's kind of frightening. I understand that, but there's somehow the members of the church are all intertwined with the Gentiles. That has to change. There has to be some separation coming. And also the Lord said among the Gentiles that they said, a Bible. We have a Bible and we need no more Bible, referring to the Book of Mormon. And if they reject that, then the Lord says he'll take away even that which they have, which is the Bible. So we see the Muslim Brotherhood and them doing that very thing as days progress here. And so we'll keep our eye on our awful situation. But understanding all of this, I still hope today you will have a good day. And as always, my prayer is that the Lord's choicest blessings will be with us all in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.